Greetings. Today I'm going to follow on from my last video in which I showed you my mixing desk. Today I'm going to demonstrate how I use it in practice. In order to do so, I'm going to do a quick recap for those who may have missed my earlier videos. This is my patch bay. You may remember I did a video earlier where I showed you a graphical representation of my patch bay. Well, this is the actual thing, or a picture of the actual thing. These first two outputs on the top row of the first patch bay are my control room outputs, and currently they're connected to the inputs of my Pulse 16 inputs 13 and 14 respectively. And obviously my Pulse 16 is connected to my Evo 16 via ADAT. So in effect, there are inputs 21 and 22. What we have here are the inputs to my two DBX compressors. Here we have the direct output from my mixing desk. So direct output number 5 is going into DBX1, we'll call it, and output number 6 is going to DBX2. The outputs from DBX1 and DBX2 are then going back into the audio interface inputs number 5 and 6. Number 5 is where the kick is routed. Number 6 is where the snare is routed. So 5 is feeding one DBX compressor. The output from the compressor is going back into the channel. Okay, does that make sense? I hope so. Here we have the input to my SansAmp PSA1. And here we have the outputs from my audio interface. These are the bass group being fed into SansAmp. So the SansAmp is receiving from the bass. My DBX 160A is receiving the snare, and my DBX 160X is receiving the kick. And the warm audio bus comp is inserted over the control room outputs. So everything is going through that. And this is the project that I'll be mixing. The track's called You've Got a Friend. The artist is Steve Maggiora. It's 100 BPM and it's analog mix, analog sum. That's what the AMAS stands for. If it was DMDS, it would be digital mix, digital sum, i.e. all in the box. But this is going to be an analog mix, as you will see as things progress. So if I switch cameras, hopefully you can see me sat at the desk. I'll probably stand up in a minute because what I'm going to be doing is mostly over that end of the desk. And I'll explain why. On the far end, channel 1 is Lola's vocals. Channel 2 is Steve's vocals. Channels 3 and 4 are the overheads. Channel 5 is the kick. Channel 6 is the snare. Channels 7 and 8 are the toms. There's nothing on channel 9. Channel 10 is the hi-hats. Nothing on channel 11. Channel 12 is a tambourine. 13 and 14 are the bass. 15 and 16 is the organ. And 17 and 18 are the piano. 19 is my mic. But because I don't have left-right engaged, it's not going to be recorded. So I can talk while I'm doing the mix, but it won't be recorded in the mix. if I show you the desktop, you can see here I've got a track primed for recording and it's been labeled GS3 mix. That's going to record the output from the desk. Now, as you can see, there's a little bit of noise, which is basically the noise of the desk. It's an old thing and it wasn't particularly quiet when it was new. Some people say that's character. We'll see. Anyway, there's a little bit of noise being registered there, but you can't see any spikes as I'm speaking because what I'm saying isn't coming out of the desk. But if I was to engage the left-right button for this channel, channel 19 as it happens, then it would show up here. But because I haven't, it's not. So the only thing that will show up here is what's coming out of the left and right here on the desk. So anything that's not routed to the main faders will not be recorded in the project. I hope that's understood. Okay, so now that we've got all the housekeeping out of the way, let's get on with it. What I'm going to do is press record in Reaper. That will also play back the tracks through the desk while at the same time recording the track which is armed and labelled GS3 mix. Now, it was round about this point in the original video as displayed on YouTube that the audio was muted for copyright reasons. All I can say is I'm a supporter of copyright. I think if you're the person who has created something, then you should be the person who decides who else uses that and how they use it and whether they can use it. I have no problem with that. Obviously though, it meant that there was a hole in the audio in the original version of this video, which is why I am doing this narration now, to cover the hole in the audio. So what I'm going to do is tell you what I was doing in the video at the time. So as you can see, I'm standing up in front of the mixing console and I'm concentrating on channels 1 and 2, which, as I mentioned earlier or later, I can't remember which, the channels 1 and 2 are the two vocals. Channel 1 being Lola, who's obviously the female vocalist, and Steve Maggiora, who is the male vocalist. So channel 1 is Lola, channel 2 is Steve. That's on the mixing console, not within Reaper. Within Reaper, they're totally different channels, tracks, but it doesn't really matter because you can route any track in Reaper basically anywhere you like, as long as you've got an actual connection to send it to. So in this case, I sent Lola's vocals to channel 1 and Steve's vocals to channel 2. And at this point, where I'm standing up over you can't really see what I'm doing because unfortunately my big fat head is in the way of what's happening. But what I'm doing there is adjusting the pan controls. This is, of course, a duet, the way that this track has been arranged. There are parts where they sing singly, but there are parts where they sing together. And in those parts where they sing together, what I'm doing on the desk is slightly panning Steve to the right and slightly panning Lola to the left so that they sound like they're singing next to each other instead of on top of each other.
And you know, wherever I am, I come running, to see you again. Oh, winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you have to do is call, and I'll be there. Yes, I will. You got a friend. You got a friend.
Ooh, and it's good to know.
Oh, it's good to know.
Hey, now
You've got a friend. You've got a friend.
Right, just gonna save that recording. Jump back to the start of the project. We're gonna solo this, take it off of record, and listen back. So you get the gist. That's basically it. I do a mix. When I'm happy with it, I record it in real time, obviously, back into the DAW, and then I listen to it from the DAW's outputs rather than feeding it back through the desk again. A couple of things to mention. Right here in the monitor section, as you can see, most of the things have been muted, but there are 3 sets of 2 channels that are unmuted, and that's because I have things coming back from these into the mix. Over here is the output from the Sans amp. Here we have the outputs from the 2 DBX compressors, and here we have the output from something that isn't in shot and I didn't take a photo of previously, which is my old Brain DJ mixer, which has built-in digital effects, including reverb. And so I'm actually sending the vocals, the snare, I think the overheads, the piano and the organ in varying amounts to the reverb in my Rain digital mixer via the auxiliary sends, and the return is coming back to these 2 monitor channels here. So all of that is being added into what's coming out of the control room outputs. And obviously that is what's feeding this, and that's why you can hear reverb on the voices, especially at the beginning when it's just Lola and I think it's a bit of the organ and a bit of the bass. That's the whole thing. Hopefully you learned something from this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, or not. And either way, I hope you do something that makes you happy.